Welcome to Empowered with Elizabeth Naumovski. Knowing how much money to make, how much money to save, how much money to spend is extremely important in your life. And if you have anxiety when you think about money, it's because you lack clarity about money. So to help you navigate your anxiety and get clarity about money, I'm joined by Kristine Besse, the founder and CEO of Untangle Money. Untangle Money, welcome, Kristine.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Well, thank you for being here. And I think it's important for you to talk about important questions for women. So let's just get right into it. Have I set my expectation? What does that mean?
Yeah, well, the first step when it comes to your money is getting a plan in place and understanding where you are, where you're going, and how you're going to get there. That's where all the decision making happens. That's where all the complications happens. That's where the trade-offs happen. That's the work. Investing is just executing on that plan, but have you set your expectation for that end point? And are you willing to do what you need to do to get there? It's totally fine if you want to change that end point, but you have no idea where you're going and what your expectation or what you want it to be unless you manage your expectations. What do I need to do to get there? Let's manage your expectations around that. I think it's critically important.
So how do you know what your expectations are?
Well, so for instance, we specialize in women. And one of the things I noticed when working with men and women is that men are really concerned about the quality of their retirement. With women, it's often, will you need a roommate? Do you need to downsize? Will you need to work into retirement? So, of those choices, do any of them sound palatable? Which ones can you entertain? Which ones are not for you? And then figuring out, well, if that's not the endpoint you want, what do you need to do differently today to get to an endpoint that you look forward to?
I'm a little bit surprised that, rather than saying this is the quality of life I want and I want to achieve it, women step back and say, well, do I need a roommate? Do I need to keep working?
Yeah.
Why do we do this?
I think it's often because by the time we've gotten the house, the kids, the car, the lifestyle that we figured everything else out, we then bring money into the equation. And by that time, there's just not enough runway left. And we know that women earn less in pensions. We know that both CPP and corporate pensions, if you have one, we go into lower paying jobs. We earn less in jobs.
We live longer.
We live much longer. We need
We're
a lot
caregivers.
more. Yeah. And so we end up outliving our money. And so when you're looking at what kind of a retirement you can afford, when you have a much smaller nest egg to do it with, you have different trade-offs that you need to make. So I think we need to, one, tell women that their financial lives are different and let them know that they really need to use time to their advantage and start that conversation early. We have research shows we have roughly $1 million less in income on average for women and men who hold bachelor's degrees. That significant amount of money that you don't have the same optionality with. So knowing early that you can use time to your advantage instead, getting that compounding effect, playing that curve, it's really important. It's critical, I'd say, for women.
So just in the previous answer that you gave, you were talking about women when they're thinking about retiring, that they're thinking about, should I get a roommate? Do you think it's a good idea for women to buy a home with another friend?
Yes. Well, so on a high level, absolutely. There's been, it's a global trend. We're seeing it all over the world. And I read an article on it, and it was 6 women that got together and purchased a house. And one of the things that I loved, they said, is it was the least amount of housework they'd ever done. And I was like, can I go now? I have 3 small boys, none of whom can hit a toilet. So.
Okay, I have a cat, so I don't even understand what that means right now. But, when it comes to buying a home or renting or whatever, that's a very crucial decision that a lot of people are making right now. And when you look at the price of housing, there's a lot of, even couples are starting to buy homes together.
Yes. I'm not a real estate agent, and I know there's a lot of legal complications, but when it comes to lowering your cost of living and extending a nest egg, it's a really great solution. If you think, it tends to be like Marmite. You either love it or you hate it. If you think it's something you might like, we're seeing it all over the world. And I think you'll see companies, coming and wrapping services around that and helping women with that.
A lot of people are adjusting their life right now because they are making less money or they've lost their job. There's so much going on with inflation, and food is so expensive. So when we come back, we're going to talk about money and having clarity about it and just getting rid of that anxiety. So don't go away. Welcome back to Empowered with Elizabeth Naumovski. We're discussing reflections about money and important questions that women need to ask about money. So what I want to talk to you about is, we were talking about what are people willing to give up in order to have options, safety, and comfort in the future? Because there's so much YOLO, you only live once. And, FOMO, the fear of missing out right now, everyone says, I don't care. I'm going to go buy myself, this $2,000 purse or the $1,000 phone or whatever it is. But, what do we need to do?
Yeah, I think it's great. So one of the things that a couple of things actually, women's spending is generally deemed in Western societies as frivolous. Men's spending is seen as discerning. Research shows we actually spend fairly similarly, essentials, non-essentials. We like to reframe it in not only what are you needing to give up, but what is bringing you the most joy? What is critically important? In investing, we call it high grading a portfolio, what taking the cream off the top. What are the things that you really like and you're so proud of yourself that you're able to gift yourself? Focus on that. Really embrace the joy from that spending. Try and get everything else free or cheap. Beg, barter, and don't steal, but, and so what we also like people to figure out is how much money do you have for every hour that you work that you can spend on things? And that will give you your own sense of relativity. How many hours am I willing to spend to buy this item? And it's a much lower number than people think. And so it's a combination of Ellen Roseman. I read her book after graduation, and she talked about dollars per hour, but after tax. And then Shannon Lee Simmons talks about taking out the money you've committed to spending before you've even gotten out of bed. And what's left over is what you have to work with. Knowing that number is extremely empowering. It gives you, when I was in my 20s, I loved buying a Starbucks coffee. It demarcated that I wasn't a student anymore. Now, the children, it's the house cleaner. I will protect that spend, and I'm so glad I can gift it to myself. But, there are older women in my life who may not think that is a judicious way to spend money, or maybe doesn't align with their values, and there might be some judgment around how good of a wife I am or housekeeper. And I have how much money I know I have to spend, what brings me the most joy, and I know that it's it's having help around the house, and that's how I protect it, and everything else I try and get free and cheap. So.
But what I think is really interesting? The judging.
Yes.
Who cares? You know what? If I have somebody who comes and cleans my house, that's my business.
Yeah.
Why would you judge me?
I think judging women for how they spend their money is somewhat of a sport in a lot of media and on a lot of things, right? We are judged on what we look like. We're judged on how much we spend on what we look like. One of the things that really bothered me about finance was, they kind of make the way spending that you put towards your appearance seem frivolous. And yet we know that the more you put towards how you look, the more money you make and the more promotions you get. So it is somewhat of an investment.
Correlated.
It is correlated, highly correlated.
Yeah, it really is.
And so it always seemed weird to me, especially when I was a waitress and, you had to have your nails done, that, a planner would say, well, you don't need to get a manicure. And there's ways around it. Cheaper could be I could do it myself, right? But if I really enjoy that spend and I can afford to do it, then I think it's fine. We just give you those guidelines and those barriers, and you can figure out how you want to stay within them.
I think it's really important. I like nice things. Who doesn't like nice things? However, I will not buy anything unless it's on sale.
Amazing.
And so this is, coming from immigrant parents. My mother taught me well that, it's got to be on sale. And if just a regular sale doesn't work, it's got to be with an extra something. Yeah. I mean, mind you, there are certain things that you can't buy that are on sale. Yeah. And that's fine. Those are, a once in a lifetime treat type of thing. Yeah. However, if it's not a good sale, I will not purchase it.
I absolutely love this because you're basically, whatever your sale, like say you get 20% off, it's basically like giving yourself a 20% raise. You're making that money go so much further. And I just really love that. I love that.
Well, I love that too. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about, the anxiety about money, because I know there are a lot of younger women out there that are stressed about money, stressed about making it, stressed about spending it, stressed about, there's just so much stress and anxiety around it. So when we come back, we'll talk to Kristine a little bit more about the anxiety and getting some more clarity about money when we come back. Welcome back to Empowered with Elizabeth Naumovski. We're discussing reflections about money, the important questions that women really need to ask. So, anxiety about money. So many young women out there have it. How do they get rid of it?
Yeah, it's the number one source of stress for women. And it comes from feeling like you're wandering around in the dark, not knowing where you're going. So, earlier on, I said the first step is getting that plan. The second step is investing. That's the execution on that plan. Whether you use an investment advisor, a robo-advisor, you do it yourself. That's just getting the percentage you need that's outlined in your plan. The middle class women or women in general, we're not investing at all. And when we are, we're in that execution phase. We're investing, but we don't know why. We don't know what we need. We're not sure if we're getting enough. It's not about maximizing. It's about getting to a place you're comfortable with. So what we find, and we're not the only place, any financial plan, when you bring clarity to why you're making the decisions you are, why you need that rate of return, why you're looking for that style of investment, that's what reduces the anxiety. The anxiety comes from feeling lost. Mm-hmm. The plan is the map. And so with Untangle Money, we see a 30% reduction in women's financial anxiety. So most people come in 7, 8, 9 out of a scale of 10. Most women leave at 3 or 4. So,
that's amazing.
Yeah, we're most proud of that.
That's, that is something to be proud of, because there's a whole educational aspect to it. And not only are you educating, you're making them feel better, and you're helping them plan their financial future.
Yep. And we're using assumptions that work for women. Women's salaries plateau in around 40. And there's the promotions gap, and then we tend to be the caregivers. If we're in a traditional relationship, our partner's parents might get older and need care first. We take the step back. We take there's all sort of euphemisms, take your foot off the gas. And we're just not getting those, often we're not getting those opportunities. I am not saying that's okay. I'm excited that that's changing. I want the pace of that to increase. While we are in this place, though, let's deal with, see what we have, what are we working with, and let's make the best of it. So while that is the reality, and you don't have a peak at 55 like the man has, you need assumptions that mirror that. So your plan isn't expecting you to be able to put more money away as your income's going up, because that's not happening for women. Mm-hmm. We're stuck at this sort of, wherever we are at 40. And I saw this graph that outlined it from Elevest, and I was 40 at the time. And I felt like I had been punched in the gut.
Uh-oh. Yeah.
It was shocking. I was like, have I really reached my economic potential? I feel so young.
Well, speaking of young, I've talked to many young people, yes. Male, female, doesn't matter the gender. Mm-hmm. And I've talked to them about, well, have you started investing? They're in their 20s. Yeah. No. Yeah. Why haven't you started? Because I don't know which app to use. Yes. And I was shocked. And I said, but you don't need an app. You can go and talk to somebody. You can sit down and have a conversation like you and I are having, yes. and talk about your financial future, yes. and talk about, what you have to do, how much money you have to put in. It's not that difficult.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was talking to people within the financial service industry, and they said, well, let's not kid ourselves. Women and men in their 20s, this isn't on their radar. 20s are the new 30s. And I said, with all due respect, let's remember, if you don't start in your 20s, it's heck of a lot harder. It's not impossible. It's never too late. It is way easier if you start in your 20s, and especially if you're female. I want you to be starting now, and I want the industry to be a bit more clear about the fact that there's way less risk if you start in your 20s than if you wait until you're 40, which is sort of when that conversation normally happens.
So we're going to keep talking about this, but I think you're right on point. When you're young, that's the best time. A lot of young people don't have money.
Yes.
However, they can start with $500, and there's something called a PAC, a pre-authorized checking account, where $50, $100 a month comes out of your banking account and it goes into your investment. And through compounded returns, you are going to get to your retirement so much quicker than if you start in your 40s, like Kristine was just saying. So, make sure that you have a plan. And if you don't have a plan, talk to somebody. Like, there are so many really, really good people out there that will make the time to speak to you and help you invest and help you with your financial future. Don't go away. We will be right back. Welcome back to Empowered with Elizabeth Naumovski. We're discussing reflections about money, the important questions that women should be asking, with Kristine Besse, the founder and CEO of Untangle Money. Kristine, before we went on the break, we were talking about a pre-authorized checking. I know it was called a PAC before. I don't know if there are new acronyms for it now. But like, how much money, what do you need to be investing each month to reach your retirement goal?
Yeah, that's a great question. We want you to go find the answer to this. It always depends. Roughly, people need to be putting around $1,000 a month away. If you start earlier, it's less. If you start later, it can be up to 3 times that much, which isn't doable for a lot of people.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. It really isn't sometimes feasible. But there's a lot of free retirement calculators out there. Go find one. I think the government has one. OSC has one. Put the inputs in. It'll give you the amount you need to be putting away each month to reach your retirement goal. And I just think you need to know what that is.
So the OSC is the Ontario Securities Commission, and they have this incredible website called
Get Smart
About Money.
Yeah.
And it's really, really good. It talks about scams. It talks about how much money you need. It's got the retirement calculator. The other thing I think is important, something important to talk about, is there are a lot of companies that'll match an RRSP contribution.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you brought this up. If you are part of a corporate matching program, now most Canadians are participating, which I'm so happy about, but $3 billion is left on the table every year. It is a significant part of your compensation package, and they match it. So sometimes it's 25%, but let's say you need that $1,000 and you put $500 into your matching program, they match 25%. That's $625. All you have left is that $375. The rest is already taken care of. That's why it's important to know how much you need to be putting away a month and how much of that is coming from the company. And then by paying yourself first, I think that's a common phrase, by getting it taken off your paycheck and never seeing that money, you are doing yourself the service of preparing yourself as best you can for retirement. And if you start right away, it really builds and compounds. So I want everybody to go find it. Often there's a window of time when you can make changes to these programs. It's not something you can enroll in every year. There's employee share option plans. There's RRSP matching. There's different plans at different companies. Find out what they are. Make sure you're getting that compensation. It's very meaningful.
Because if you're walking away from free money.
Free money. It's the best return on your investment you're ever going to see. You're never going to get guaranteed return like that anywhere else.
So if we're talking about money, let's talk about, what does inflation mean for your money right now, both for the investments and for cash?
Yeah, so inflation, we talked about this before inflation came out of control, and I used to always preface it by saying, this is why your parents or your grandparents are worried about it, because we hadn't seen it in so long, and now all of a sudden it's back with a vengeance. inflation is really interesting. It really erodes cash. Women tend to sit on too much cash, and it erodes that value very quickly. At a 2% inflation rate, the value of your money gets cut in half every 35 years. That effect happens quicker the higher the inflation rate is. So when you're sitting on cash or debt, inflation is going to be really bad for you. Interestingly, the part that people don't kind of put together is that it actually really benefits people who are investing. And we see that already instantaneously in the GICs. Now, the entire sort of transition to better investment returns takes about 3 to 5 years, but as it works its way through the system, and we'll start seeing that it is a great time now while the market is down to be thinking about putting money to work, and then getting those improved rates of return once that comes through the system. So an amazing opportunity if you have cash at the moment.
So we have about 20 seconds left. Words of wisdom for anyone who's watching right now that needs help.
Start with a plan. It's just how you get the clarity. You reduce your anxiety and you understand why you're making the decisions you're making. You know where you're heading.
Thank you so much for all your time, Kristine. This is wonderful.
Thank you for having me.
With the purpose of setting yourself up with your finances, what are you willing to give up now in exchange for the options of safety and comfort in the future? And before you spend your hard-earned money on any purchase, think about how many hours you had to work in order to buy the item. Now, this will help you navigate your spending and savings. Ask yourself the hard questions now and think about your future. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski, and I'm trying to empower you and make frugality fashionable. Bye for now.